Okay, so since statewide and district assessment is really an important component of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, we're going to just focus on this area in this particular PowerPoint. So we know that the multidisciplinary team um, really is responsible for all the assessments. And we know that all children with disabilities need to be assessed or tested. And we also know that um, there may be alternative type state tests for some children or modified tests. And our children with disabilities may take the same test or assessment as any other child, but they may be in need of accommodations to um, to complete that particular state test. So this slide really deals with that particular issue. So state education agencies need to report that data, and so the local education agencies need to report that data. And so the data, again, consists of how many children are taking the same test as other children, how many students who are taking those tests with accommodations or modifications, and how many students are taking alternative assessments. Um, so we need to be, obviously the important component of this area is that we need to be collecting data and monitoring academic achievement and functional performance. Um, we need to have the local education agencies need to provide rationale when children participate in alternative assessments. And we do know that, again, getting back to the measurements in terms of the annual goals and short-term objectives, if children have short-term objectives on their IEPs, we need to have them matched to the assessments that the child will be participating in so that they can achieve. Um, let's just talk a minute about private schools in relation to this. So if a child is enrolled in a private school, um, the state and the local education agencies still have some responsibilities towards that child. And particularly this is referred to in the law as equitable participation. So services, particularly related services such as occupational therapy and physical therapy, are rendered to the child. And so the state and the local education agency must supplement, not supplant, their share for these services. And of course, again, the data, the numbers are important to the state of those children served. Um, the consultation includes how the local education agency will operate for that child throughout the school year in terms of equitable participation. But if the local education agency disagrees with the private school on services, it must provide an explanation as to why. And there has to be collaboration between the private school and the local education agency in terms of the consultation and services. And again, so the last couple of bullets deal with that in terms of if there's dissatisfaction or complaints in relation to these services. But I guess the bottom line that we need to take from this is that all children with disabilities are entitled to services. The personnel involved. In terms of assessment, we know that the No Child Left Behind Act really had a strong tie and still has a strong tie-in to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and there's so much related to assessment and accountability in that particular law, which seems to be loosening up in 2016 at this point when we're looking at this video. And we expect that that law will be reauthorized, as IDEA will, within the next couple of years. But at this point in time, we have to make sure that all of the personnel testing and working with children are highly qualified. And so highly qualified is aligned with the No Child Left Behind Act. And in particular for us taking special education, it means that you have to teach to the standards, and so you may be required to be dually certified or highly qualified in some way to teach subject areas. State eligibility. Again, we're aligned with the No Child Left Behind Act in terms of our standards. The performance goals then for a number of children, actually most children with disabilities, are measured in the same way we measure standards for children without disabilities, and they have to meet adequate yearly progress. They have to graduate, and so the states need to report on graduation rates and dropout rates of children with disabilities. And to any extent, the goals and objectives have to be appropriate and have to meet standards for the child's state, and there's annual progress reporting to the state. And really, what we're trying to address here also is the progress related to perhaps other issues, or lack of progress related to other issues. We can't over-identify children and place them in special education for reasons other than having a disability. And we know that that we have disproportionately placed children from different races and ethnicities into special education. And so this whole accountability issue is also trying to address that problem, which has been problematic since the inception of the first special education law. And so states have to be very careful. They must have policies and procedures and reporting out of ethnicities and races and English language learners placed into special education. States are required to really early intervene, and response to intervention is also a process that has been utilized for a number of years now in a number of states to try to address the over-identification and disproportionality related to race and ethnicity. We cannot require medication. Actually, as teachers, it's not even in our purview at any meeting to recommend medication. We also cannot deny a child from receiving services or attending school if, in fact, a parent refuses to place a child on medication. We can certainly consult with, we can show parents data, we can also consult, provided we are given permission with doctors. We can recommend evaluations, we can recommend behavior intervention plans, but again, we cannot force medication. As part of the state, every state has a state advisory panel of special education, and parents are involved in that particular panel, as well as various professionals that really understand the whole system and understand special education. Again, data is extremely important. We already talked about this, but this slide shows that states have to report children receiving services in relation to their race, their ethnicity, whether or not they're limited English language learners. It's a mouthful. Relation to gender and the disability category they're in. So all states have to report that to the federal government, because, as you know, also the federal government, the Office of Special Education in Washington, D.C., is providing funds to provide services for children with disabilities in each state, and they are concerned about overrepresentation as well. So again, this slide deals with more data. So you can see all of the data that has to be reported to the federal government, and each state is monitored. Some of you may have participated in cyclical monitors from our state with Department of Education. And we're monitored, and this type of data has to be reported to the federal government. So how many children were placed into interim alternative educational settings, how many due process hearings were there, how many mediations, etc. And that concludes just additional information on statewide reporting and assessment.